Today on CityCast Denver. We're taking some time off as the year wraps up, but we didn't want to leave you hanging. So we're replaying some of our favorite episodes of the year and bestowing some well-deserved superlatives. Our pick for the guest with the most alluring voice is author Manuel Ramos. The master of Chicano noir joined us in June to talk about his latest Gus Corral mystery, Angels in the Wind. We'll be back in the new year with fresh episodes. Today is Thursday, December 30th, 2021. I'm Bree Davies, and this is CityCast Denver.
Every great city has a great mystery writer willing to plumb its depths. Sometimes it feels like a prerequisite to be a great city in the first place. There must be that one person willing to take a clear-eyed look into the underbelly, the darkness, the evil lurking in the shadows, to show readers what's really hiding around the corner. It's a particularly strong tradition in Los Angeles, with crime fiction greats like Raymond Chandler, James Ellroy, and Walter Mosley. In D.C., they've got George Pelecanos, telling stories in that murky space where the federal government meets the Chocolate City. And here in Denver, we've got Manuel Ramos, the master of Chicano noir.
Here, I'll put my face on for a minute here.
Manuel is my favorite local writer. I've been following his work pretty much since the first gripping page of Desperado, a mile-high noir. And I have to give some credit to the Colorado Book Awards on that one. They got it right when they gave Desperado the nod for Best Colorado Mystery in 2014. It was Manuel's first starring Gus Corral, an ex-con private eye from the north side, struggling to keep up with a neighborhood changing before his eyes. I've since gone back and enjoyed many of Manuel's other award-winning stories and novels, but I've still got a soft spot for Gus, who's back in Manuel's latest, Angels in the Wind, which follows Gus out of the city and onto the eastern plains. Manuel Ramos, welcome to CityCast Denver.
Yeah, good morning, Paul. How you doing? Or maybe, I don't know, is this a morning thing or not?
Oh, this is absolutely a morning thing. And I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. Manuel, I have to tell you, I loved your new book, Angels in the Wind.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
And as a noir fan, like I've been reading your stuff for a while, and I think the first thing listeners have to know is that you don't just write noir, you write a more specific version of noir, a more specialized version. You've described your novels as Chicano noir, and I wonder if we could start with breaking that term down a little bit. What is a noir, and what makes your novels Chicano noir?
It was once described to me that in a noir story, the protagonist is screwed on the first page, and it goes downhill from there. You know, so that's the way traditionally you look at these stories. They're dark. There's often not a hero. There's usually not a happy ending. The literary noir can trace its roots back to noir movies, the new German wave and the French cinema of the 20s, 30s, and 40s. And from that developed the classic noir movies of the American cinema that we see.
You'll never understand me, but I'll try once and then give it up. When a man's partner's killed, he's supposed to do something about it. It doesn't make any difference what you thought of him. He was your partner, and you're supposed to do something about it.
Now, what I do is I take all of that and mix it up with some cultural and historical references coming from my own background. You know, myself, I'm a Mexican-American, I'm a Chicano. And so when I throw all that in there, involving my cultural history, my heritage, and combine that with a noir story, I think I come up with something called Chicano noir.
Well, it's a wonderful combination. And I have to say, you know, just as a personal note from me, as someone who's relatively new to this city, who loves learning about it, and who also loves the noir as a genre, your novels have been a real open door for me to learn about different aspects of Chicano culture that I am not getting anywhere else. And I think there's something about that combination of the noir with Chicano culture that's really, really special.
Well, that's heartening to hear that, and it's not anything that I was consciously trying to create. It's just, I'm a storyteller. I told the stories I knew. My grandfather was a storyteller. I repeated some of his stories, and we ended up with what other people have called Chicano noir, and which I'm quite happy to talk about and to say that, yeah, I do that kind of stuff.
This episode is brought to you by Choir League. Choir League presents Sing and Shout, an unforgettable afternoon celebrating the powerful legacy of African American spirituals, the foundation of all American music. On Sunday, May 4th at 3:30 p.m., join Lonnie Norwood, gospel singer and teacher from the South Side of Chicago, for a workshop and performance with Choir League. Lonnie will guide folks through this powerful American art form, where it came from, and how it informed American music that came after it. You can buy tickets now on Eventbrite and enjoy the show with Lonnie, but you can also join Choir League. The group meets weekly for practice at local breweries and distilleries. Singers can sign up for 6 to 8 week sessions, and there's always a performance at the end of each cycle. There's no audition to join and no experience necessary. Tickets for the May 4th show with Lonnie Norwood are on sale now at Eventbrite. Just check the link in our show notes. For more information on the program and joining the choir, visit choirleague.com or email info@choirleague.com.
And when listeners do read the book, at least this new one and the most recent few that you've written, they'll find your hero, Gus Corral.
Yeah.
And I think we got to talk about Gus because he's becoming quite the character over the course of these last few novels. Yeah. Can you talk about where he's coming from and where he's at the start of this new one?
Yeah, okay. Well, at the start of the new one, Angels in the Wind, he's still suffering from the effects of what happened in the previous book. And in that one, Gus actually ends up in Cuba, and he's involved in this plot to smuggle money into Cuba on behalf of a superstar athlete. But at the end of that story, he gets really beat up, and it's actually at the end of that story, some people were worried that maybe I'd killed him off since it was so serious. But when we open up Angels in the Wind, we find that no, he survived, but he's in pretty bad shape, and so he's suffering from depression and headaches, anxiety. He can't quite focus. And his sister, Corinne, who's been a character in these stories from the very beginning, advises him that he needs to get away. He needs to get out of Denver, out of the north side. And maybe he can go help some relatives that live on the eastern plains. He's an investigator after all, and there's a boy, cousin named Matias, who is a chronic runaway. And at the beginning of the novel, Corinne tells Gus that it's more serious this time because the boy's already been gone for a month and they need some help to try to find him. And so that sounds perfect for Gus. He gets out of the city, heads to what he thinks is going to be the quiet countryside, and starts to search for Matias. And of course, after that, it gets a little crazier. I felt like I was sucked into a black bag as soon as I left the town limits and turned onto Deer Lick Way, the road to Essie's house. I concentrated on the stretch lit by my headlights, and I told myself that I was driving in the quiet and peaceful countryside, nothing to worry about. No rush hour madness, no out-of-control truckers, no drunk office workers speeding to the next happy hour. I breathed in deep and full. There had been a time when I would have believed these thoughts, and the ride wouldn't have meant anything to me except as a way to get to where I would sleep. But that was before my dented head and warped imagination. Now I turned to the darkest alternative. I followed Essie's directions, and for a few miles my phone's GPS worked. But when I climbed a small hill and then sunk below the horizon, my phone went blank and Essie's words jumbled together in my memory. "It's not that bad," I whispered in the narrow cab of my pickup. "Focus, focus." The truck's smell, grease and sweat, reassured me. The smooth-running Chevy six-banger gave me confidence. I relaxed and remembered that Essie said to watch for a sign with an arrow pointing to Gilroy Road. I picked up speed on the downslope of the hill. The sky was dotted with stars never seen in the city. Night draped over my faded pickup. I cruised faster than I should have. Images of Wes Delgado and Rob Lopez mixed with the photographs of Matt that Matt's father had given me. I worried about Matt and couldn't avoid the darkest thoughts about what had happened to him. I almost drove past the sign that appeared suddenly in my headlights. I slammed the brakes and the pickup fishtailed on the gravel road. I wrenched the oversized steering wheel and hoped I'd stay on the gravel. I didn't. The truck swayed and rocked, and I ended up turned around in the shoulder-soft dirt. A sudden stop killed my engine. My headlights flickered and I turned them off. I could see only blackness. I started to sweat. I felt dizzy, and a hot flash confirmed I was in panic mode, although nothing serious had happened. I took in deeper breaths of air. I pumped the gas pedal and turned the key. I did that too many times and stopped only when I accepted that I'd flooded the engine. "You dumb fucker," I said to myself.
So we just heard an excerpt from early on in Angels in the Wind, and this is a point where our hero Gus is just setting off to try to figure out what happened to Matt Montoya, his cousin or maybe a nephew. I wasn't quite sure what the relation was.
Right, and Gus reflects on how it's sometimes family relationships can get kind of confusing, and so he's cousin to Essie and to Matt's father, but I mean, Matt could be his nephew, could be his cousin, or maybe they're not even related. They just call each other cuz. So. But they're all family anyway.
All your Gus Corral novels have carried the subtitle A Mile High Noir. Yet Gus has found himself in Mexico, Cuba, like we talked about. The climax of one of them took place up in the mountains. And now this new one, the story plays out in Pueblo and the Eastern Plains. So I want to ask you about place, and specifically Pueblo and the Eastern Plains. Is there something about those places that reflects something about Denver right now that you wanted to explore?
Let me give you a little bit of my history. You know, I grew up in the small town of Florence, Colorado, which is south. And going to the big city meant going to Pueblo for us. And my wife grew up in Lamar, which is right in the area of what I wrote about in Angels in the Wind. And Lamar is a small town out there on the plains. And, you know, when I reflect on growing up in Florence, sometimes it's very idyllic. You know, it's country, it's rural, it's quiet, it's natural. We grew up along the river. And then other times I reflect on some things that aren't so positive, right? I mean, the community was very split in terms of racial and ethnic identities. Everybody knew where they were supposed to live. And, there was an inherent racism in the town. And so for me, it's kind of a double-edged view of that kind of Colorado, which is very different from the Colorado of Aspen and Breckenridge or Denver, right, or Boulder. For Gus, who's a city boy, who grew up on the streets, who has had tension and agitation because of the gentrification of his neighborhood, and so he's not, in the Eastern Plains, he's not dealing with gentrification necessarily. He's not dealing with inner city violence, relating to gangs or drug dealing necessarily, but he comes across a different kind of violence and a different kind of evil that exists out there. Gus gets out of Denver thinking it's going to be a time to maybe ease back, and just the opposite happens.
To find out more, you're just going to have to pick up a copy of Angels in the Wind at your favorite local bookstore. And while you're there, I asked Manuel for a few recommendations of other local writers of color that he'd recommend, and I'm going to put those in the show notes for you.
Hey, producer Xander McMahon here, wishing you a happy holiday on behalf of the whole CityCast Denver team. And I'm here to remind you that we won't have any fresh episodes until the new year, but stick with us. We have more superlatives to hand out this week that we're super excited about. Also, if you're feeling generous and want to give us a present this holiday season, a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts would be sublime. All right, we'll talk to you soon.